Alrighty, everyone. Well, thank you for being with us. Thank you for taking this time to come together in the spirit of love. This, of course, is the Sunday before Valentine's Day. And Valentine's Day in our culture is, uh, is truly a celebration of love, at least a celebration of love as human consciousness understands it. And I say that with a smile on my face because the marketeers have certainly taken this, as Ernest Holmes would call it, this compulsion to love that exists within the human soul, this drive, this desire, this need, if you will, this need to love and to be loved. And they have tried to turn it to their advantage by convincing us that love is buying cards and candy and wine and fine meals and romantic getaways and all sorts of things. And that's okay. All of that's okay as far as it goes. It is one understanding of love, but a human understanding of love. And what we want to do today is we want to come to a different understanding of love, a different understanding than perhaps we had yesterday or a year ago. We want to come to an understanding of love as spiritual practice. Love is a very expression of our soul. Love is as the very impulse of the universe. Dr. Holmes tells us that love is the creative impulse of the universe. That when God creates out of love. Everything the divine does is done out of love, out of a sense of oneness, out of a sense of unity, out of a sense of joy, of expressing itself, of exploring itself in a new way, of seeing itself through our eyes, through its creation's eyes. And the divine must completely accept each and every part of its creation. And each and every part of the divine creation must interact and interface perfectly with each and every other part, because they are two parts of the same whole. There is a unity there. There is a oneness there. There may not even be a language there, but there's a communication that takes place at a different level. The bees and the flowers cooperate. And by their cooperation, they bring growth and expansion and a greater expression to each of their lives. The bees could not live without the flowers. The flowers would not be as they are without the bees. But together there's a synergy. When two or more are gathered, I am there. We have in the Bible, there's a synergy. There's something else that is coming together there. And we want to explore, we want to go through some ideas of the human idea of relationships, the human idea of love. But we want to come back to this mystical unity, this oneness, this experience of oneness that is the definition of love that we talked about last week. So if we think about relationships, none of us can escape them, that's for sure. And it seems that we all want them, and we want many different kinds of relationships. We want people in our lives to help us. We have ideas that are bigger than we can implement on our own. We need like-minded folks, kindred souls, to come together in a spirit of cooperation to create something larger than we are capable of creating on our own. A business, a church, a volunteer organization, an art project, a school, something that is our way of coming forward to express God's love uniquely, but it's much bigger than any one person can do. So we want to bring into our lives like-minded souls, kindred souls, and we want to cooperate, we want to help one another, and we want to grow, and we want to do something together. That is one kind of relationship. We have a relationship with our parents. And sometimes it's not always a relationship that we thought it should be. It's not what TV told us it should be. We didn't grow up in Ozzie and Harriet's household. We wonder why. We have relationships with our children, and we try to figure out that out as we're learning to be parents, as we're growing. Here are these beautiful little souls that God has sent to us to bring love to our lives, to share their love with us, to take our love, and for us to guide and to guard and to teach. And we do the best we can, even though later on we find out we probably didn't know a whole lot. We were learning and making it up as we were going along, but that's another kind of love and another kind of relationship. And we have relationships at work with just people that we must cooperate with to get our jobs done. We have clients, we have supervisors, we have employees, we have vendors, we have all kinds of people that we come into contact with on a daily basis. And we may not think of it as a loving experience, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it may be an unpleasant experience. But nevertheless, these two are relationships. And all relationships can be, not necessarily are, but they can be grounded on a footing of love, on a sense of unity, on an experience of oneness, on a belief that we are more alike than we are different, and our differences are not problems that need to be fixed, but our differences are uniqueness that needs to be celebrated. We come into our romantic relationships with our loved ones, and there's a special feeling that we have towards our beloved, and a special feeling that they have towards us. And in this feeling, we can experience more completely the love and the presence of God. And we have all of these different relationships in our life, all of them. And if you read the email I sent out last night, it said even a hermit in a cave cannot escape relationships. Because that hermit in the cave may be dealing with all of the relationships we just talked about, but not in person, but in thought. And in addition, they are dealing with the relationship that they have to their own self, and the relationship that they have to their God. So it's impossible to escape relationships. It's impossible. And there's also something within us that is compelling us, that is drawing us together. The relationships are as natural to us as breathing. Said in the beginning, we need relationships. And I know sometimes when I use the word need, people will come back, and there were metaphysical teachers who would instruct people and say, don't ever use the word need. You're telling the universe that you're a needy person, and you're not a needy person. And my answer to that is, go hold your breath for 10 minutes and then come back and talk to me. And of course, no one can hold their breath for 10 minutes because we need to breathe. We may not like to think of ourselves as a needy person. You may think of it in another term. You may think of it as a requirement, but that's kind of wordsmithing to me. There are certain things that we need. We need to breathe. We need to eat. We need to drink. And we need love. We need relationships. I'm sure you've heard of the studies where they found that premature infants in the hospitals will do better if somebody puts their hand in the incubator and strokes them and loves them and sings to them than the children who are left alone, that newborns who are put in an incubator and they are denied human contact, that they will do poorly. And in some cases they will die. That there's something about this very essence of the human contact, of another human being reaching out to touch us in a kind and in a loving way, in a supporting way. There's something within us that seems to be a basic human need. that we desire this. It is the compulsion that Ernest Holmes talks about. And there's also something within us that desires to reach out to another, to be kind and to be loving. And you see this when people go into a room where there's a baby. Everybody wants to pick the baby up. Everybody wants to hold the baby. Everybody wants to sing the songs that their grandparents sang to them. They want to sing those to the baby. They want to see that little one smile. They want to hear it coo. There's something within us that just a very essence of our life that wants to reach out, wants to touch, wants to caress, wants to love, wants to be loved. And we need to understand that that is a normal and a natural and a wonderful part of life. It is something that is as essential to our life as is breathing, as is eating, as is drinking. But we want to approach this from the proper level. Excuse me. We want to understand what love is from the spiritual level. It's, we are in this world, but we are not of this world. And we are constantly, it seems, trying to figure out, am I human or am I spiritual? And the answer is that we are spiritual, having a human experience. But we are awakening from that human dream. As Joel Goldsmith tells us, we were told in the book of Genesis that God put Adam into a deep sleep to remove his rib to create Eve. And of course it's a metaphor, it's a teaching story. But nowhere are we told that Adam meaning clay man or earthen man, man of the earth, which is what our bodies are, of the earth. We are all Adam. And Eve is the soul. But nowhere did Adam ever wake up. And we are in the process of awakening from that dream. We are in the process of letting go of the ideas that we are just merely mortals, that everything is materialistic. And we are starting to come into our own of realizing our spiritual nature as well as our spiritual power. You remember at Christmas time we talk about why does the Christ, the awareness of the presence of God within us, why does that come to us as a baby, as we're taught in the mythology around Christmas, the teaching stories. And it comes to us as a baby because we're not ready to handle the power. Please keep that in mind. We are growing, we are learning, we are starting to come into awareness of our spiritual nature and into awareness of our spiritual power, but none of us is there yet. We are all learning, we are all growing, we are all awakening, and we are all suffering from the delusion of the human dream. Suffering from the delusion that everything is material. In a materialistic way of looking at the world, consciousness is a chemical reaction of the brain. And in a spiritual way of looking at things, the brain is an organ that consciousness created to use while it expresses itself here on this earth. So I mention that because while humanity is suffering from this dream, this delusion of materialism, our ideas of relationship suffer from those delusions as well. We have to keep in mind that we are spiritual beings living in a spiritual universe, and that everything around us reflects back to us what we believe in our heart. Life is a mirror to the rich and poor alike. What we are looking at, we are looking with. What we see out there is not so much about what's out there as it is what's in here. in our heart. We see the world that we expect to see. Can't remember who wrote the book, When You Believe It, You'll See It. When you believe it, you see it. So what we see reflected back to us is an outpicturing, if you will, of our beliefs. We live in a spiritual universe. But we are suffering under the delusion that we live in a material universe, materialistic only universe. And for that reason, we see those beliefs reflected back to us. So in the materialistic view of the world, in the human way of the world, in the Adam dream consciousness way of the world, relationships are not necessarily a spiritual practice. They are at times a matter of convenience, and many other times a matter of great inconvenience. But they are coming in many situations. We are coming at relationships out of need, out of a sense of lack, is what I mean by need there. We're coming out of relationships in a sense that I want something from you, and I am in this relationship with you to get what I want out of it. Now, it doesn't have to be a bad thing, you know. So you're driving down the interstate and you're hungry and you want food. So you pull off the road and you go into a restaurant. You sit down to eat. Excuse me. What do you want? You want food. And how do you get it? Another human being comes and takes your order, a server, and they go back in the kitchen and they give it to still another person, a cook. And the food is prepared, and then the food is brought back to you. And in that transactional relationship, you have two human beings coming together to get something from the other. You get food from them, they get money from you. And in many cases, in our human way of looking at things, that's as far as it goes. We'll never see this person again. We'll never take that highway again. They'll never see us again. And there's no further exchange. There's nothing else of value that is transferred there. And we take this transactional view of relationships with us as we go through the human idea of relationships, as we go through the delusion of the Adam dream of relationships. And in that delusion, then, every relationship we have, we evaluate in terms of, well, what am I getting from it? Not what am I bringing to it, but what am I getting from it? So I go to work, and how much do I make? And how much prestige do I have? And what kind of perks do I get? And all of those kind of things. We go sometimes even into our romantic relationships with the same attitude, in terms of this other person has something that I want, and by being in relationship with them, I am going to get what I want. Maybe I go into a relationship with another person for security because I think they have enough money to take care of me, or maybe I go into that relationship because I want somebody to take care of me in my old age, and all of these different reasons that we have for going into relationships. Many times people go into relationships because of the way that they feel when they're with the other person. So when I'm with you, it's just magical, see, and I'm in relationship with you. And then what happens is I change. And suddenly I no longer feel the magic when I'm with you. And what does that mean? Of course, in our society, it means that you're broken and you need to be replaced. Just like a car that doesn't run. Not getting what I want out of it. It's not taking me where I want to go. And neither is this person who I'm in relationship with. So I need to end that relationship, and I need to move on. And I need to find another person who I can feel that special magic with. until I change, until the magic goes away, and then they're broken and they need to be replaced as well. And that is the way that our society looks at things. That is what is going on, if you will, if you step back, is that everybody is trying to get something. They're trying to reach outside of themselves and to somehow get another person to do something for them so that they can feel good about themselves. And I don't know how you feel when you're in the presence of a very pushy salesperson, for example, and I just hate it when they come and they knock on the door and they start in with, boy, this house would look great with aluminum siding, or wouldn't you like new windows to save energy? Whatever their opening hook is for their pitch, and I tell them, no, I'm not interested. And as soon as I say, no, I'm not interested, they start moving on, And then finally I just have to tell them, please leave, just go away. I'm not interested. Because all they want from me, or I feel that all they want from me at that time, is for me to sign a contract with them. That appears to be the only interest that they have in me. Don't know who I am. They don't know anything about my family. They don't know anything about my goals or my ambitions, and they could care less as long as it helps them to get my name on a contract. In other words, they just want to use me for their purposes. And we get that feeling in so many of our relationships that we actually can feel drained. I hear people say this to me all the time. My God, it's like those people are just sucking the life out of me. I go to work and the customers come in and all they do is they just complain, they complain, and they just want stuff, and they just completely, want to drain me. And we feel that way because we are in relationships where everybody is trying to get something from someone else. It is completely upside down. It is completely backwards, If you look at love, if you look at marriage, perhaps not love, but perhaps marriage, amongst the aristocracy of the 1800s and earlier, the royal families married their children off to one another. The idea was that if they sent the young prince from one country to marry a young princess from another country, that the two families would now have something in common. They would be bound together. And usually it was wealth that they were trying to protect. They were trying to bind together their wealth. And it would bring peace because the two families wouldn't go to war because they were related. And of course, if you look at the history of World War I, you can see how poorly that worked out because the Kaiser in Germany and the Tsar in Russia were first cousins, and they went to war with one another. But it was for purpose. The marriage was for purpose. It was for convenience. It was to get something. It was not necessarily to give something. It was not necessarily to come to a deeper realization of the soul, to come to a deeper realization of what God in that other person might be, what God in myself might be. So that's the human way of looking at things, and that is the way that disappoints. Well, I was taking a psychology course a couple semesters ago at school, and they were talking about marriage and relationships, and one of the statistics that they offered up is that in countries where children undergo arranged marriages, the divorce rate is lower than in the United States, where we declare our freedom to choose our spouse based on love. Now think about that. The divorce rate is lower if people come along and say, look, you two, go get married now. That's it. We've decided for you. The divorce rate is lower there than in our country where we self-select, where we go and choose. Now that's not to say that everybody needs to stay married to one another forever. There are times that relationships should be dissolved and are dissolved in the best interest of all concerned. But what it says to me is that our idea of what love is perhaps needs to be adjusted. So if we look at a different idea of love, if we look at the idea of love that I would hope that we can celebrate this Valentine's Day as we go about getting and giving cards and gifts and candy and hugs and all of the things that we traditionally do on Valentine's Day, let's come back and look at love from a spiritual point of view. And let's look at what I mean by the spiritual need of love as opposed to the material need of you give something to me because I want it. And I get it from you when we are in some type of a relationship, romantic relationship, a work relationship, a friend relationship. And you know, as I said, think about how you feel when you're faced with people who just want something from you, and the only reason they want to be in your presence is because they want something from you, and how tiring that is. And flip that around and ask yourself, what would it be like if someone wanted to be with me for no other reason than to be with me? What would it be like if I wanted to be with another person for no other reason than to be with that person? Just to be with them, just to share with them, just to spend time with them. No agenda, no physical need that you have to do anything for me or give something to me or care for me or give me money or give me prestige so I can show the world what a wonderful, significant other I have. But I only want to be with you. Just you. And when I'm with you, I am in your presence, and you have my attention, and I have yours. What would that kind of relationship be like? Is that the kind of relationship that people truly want to have? Now that doesn't mean that we won't do things for each other. It doesn't mean that we won't help each other. But it means that we may be coming at it from a totally different perspective, a totally different way. I'll give you just a brief example. Before Lori and I, before we graduated from our ministerial training, we were trying to decide where in the country we wanted to go to start our work. And we felt that it needed to be near the ocean. That was a place that we wanted to be. But other than that, we weren't locked in on any particular place. We hadn't decided on Wilmington, North Carolina yet. So we literally toured the coast of the United States in our minds and in part in our travels, from like below Jacksonville, Florida, all the way up to Cape Cod. And we went one November. We went out to Cape Cod to celebrate Thanksgiving out there and to celebrate Lori's birthday out at Chatham Bars. You see it on the Weather Channel all the time, Chatham Bars. It's kind of where the knee in Cape Cod is right there at Chatham. And there's nothing to do there in the wintertime, by the way. It's just completely empty. There was very few people. We almost had the hotel to ourselves. But there was a little Christian Science reading room there, and it was right in the center of town. And every time we would go through town, we would pass this little Christian Science reading room. And I said, Laura, I'd like to, something's telling me I'd like to stop there. I've never been to a Christian Science reading room, but here we are. We've got plenty of time, and it's something about that place. It seems like we ought to stop there. And she agreed, And we went in, and it was nice. It was like a little library. There's plenty of books, like a little bookstore. There was a room in the back where they had all kinds of lectures on cassette tapes and some tape machines with headphones where people could go and sit and listen to different lectures on different topics. And there was a very nice lady in there, and she was very friendly, and she said, well, where are you folks from? Obviously we weren't from around there, so where are you folks from? And we told her, and she said, well, why did you come here? And we said, well, we're getting ready to start a ministry, and we're looking for a place. Oh, that's wonderful. She was very, very interested. And we started talking, and she started talking about her son, her oldest son, and she said, well, he wanted to do something with computers, but he went to school at the local community college, and he couldn't take the structure of the classroom, and he dropped out. Now, I had just been doing a tremendous amount of research on how to retrain the workforce for the company I worked for into computer networking, because that's where the technology was going. And I was looking at it specifically from the point of view of adult learners who could not or would not go back to school. So I had just completely researched all of the options for an adult to be able to get the proper certification and get a job in that field by studying at home. And I had all that information in my head, and I gave it to her. And she wrote it all down. And at as we were getting ready to leave, she just kind of looked and smiled, and we looked back at her and smiled. And we knew that at that moment, that what had happened is that the love of God had brought us together. That little intuition that kept saying, well, there's a place you need to go stop, you need to go check out. It wasn't about what I was going to get while I was there. It was about being that instrument of giving, that I had something that was of value to her son, to his growth, and that we went there for a totally different reason, in a totally different spirit, but yet it turned out better than we could have expected. And she sent us an email a couple years later. She took our email address just to let us know that he had graduated. He had taken all the home study courses and taken the test and graduated the curriculum, and was now going to work in that field. So you see, we came together and we exchanged information. But the reason we came together was not trying to make something happen, not trying to force anything to happen. We came together in a spirit of love. She was there in a spirit of love, keeping this reading room open for spiritual seekers who might come in and find some inspiration. We went there in a spirit of love and openness just to see what was there, just to explore. And in that spirit of openness is how we came together. So what we have to consider is that the relationships in our lives are a reflection of our belief, whether we like it or not. Most of us don't like it. Well, why did I bring that jerk into my life? Well, unfortunately, that jerk was a perfect reflection of your consciousness. We don't want to hear that. We don't want to believe that. But nevertheless, that is a truth of our nature as a spiritual being. So we have to come to recognize then that all of our relationships are a reflection of our deeper beliefs. And in that regard, then, our relationships are a perfect path, or a perfect road mark, if you will, road map of where we are ready to do some work in our soul. Where are we keeping ourselves separated from God? If we wish to have, everyone wants to know, what is the secret of great relationships? If we wish to have great relationships with other people, we have to recognize that the relationships that we have with other people are a reflection of our beliefs. And they are a reflection of the greatest relationship that we will ever have, which is our relationship with God. But the only way that we can know about our relationship with God is to know about our relationship with our own self. Because our relationship with God takes place entirely within our own consciousness. So if we believe ourselves to be unworthy of love, we will find that other people don't love us. If we are critical and judging of ourselves, we will find that we are critical and judgmental of other people, and we will attract into our lives people to be critical and judgmental of us. If we believe that we are not good enough or smart enough, and that we need other people to come into our life to take care of us, we will continue to bring into our life people who reflect back to us that we are not good enough and that we are not smart enough. And instead of them taking care of us, we will wind up taking care of them, because that is a reflection of our consciousness. So our spiritual path then, our spiritual growth is in learning how to love ourself. Because if we cannot love our own self, we cannot love another. It's like being in the airplane when the oxygen mask comes down. You have to put your own mask on first before you're in position to help another, because otherwise you'll pass out and won't be good to either one of you. And when we want to consider relationships, we have to start with our relationship with God, which is our relationship with ourselves. Because what we truly are, if we will just get all these crazy ideas that we learned growing up, if we will get those out of the way, what we truly are, what our spirit truly is the very Spirit of God expressing itself as us. And if we cannot learn to love our own self as that, as the very love and the very presence of God incarnate here on earth, and to do it in a humble way, not a boastful, egotistical way, but to do it in a humble way that says, oh, of my own self I do nothing. It is the Spirit within that does it all. If we cannot do that, we cannot love another. And another cannot love us. Because our loving relationships are not about getting, but they are about letting that divine love that is within us flow through us. What our need is in relationships is to feel that oneness, right? We all left the garden, and we are all trying to get back to the garden, and the garden represents that experience of unity, that experience of oneness. And it is in our relationships that we start to experience that feeling of oneness, that feeling of unity. The things that we love, the people that we love, the pets that we love are the things that we feel one with. And we start to feel whole again. And that is what is compelling us. That is why Dr. Holmes says love compels us. That is what is driving us forward, is we seek and we desire to eliminate the illusion of separation, eliminate the illusion of apartness, to recognize our oneness. So we have to recognize our oneness of our own self with the divine. We have to recognize that first, because if we cannot see it in ourselves, we will never see it in another. And then the secret to good relationships is to recognize that within each and every other person. We have to look beyond the appearances. We have to look beyond the illusion of activity and behavior. We have to look beyond all of that, and we have to look right in there and know that right there in that person, I am seeing the very love and the very presence of God. It is trying to come out. It is trying to awaken from the dream. It is trying to shake off the human consciousness of not good enough, not smart enough, not pretty enough. The human consciousness of judgment and criticism and resentment and fear. It's trying to shake all those things off. It's doing the best it can. So rather than to get hung up in the outward appearances, I focus on the inward truth. That every person I meet today is the love of God. I start in the mirror in the morning when I'm brushing my teeth. This person I'm looking at today is the love of God. Every person I meet today is the love of God. Divine love brings us together so that we can help each other and encourage each other to grow and to discover more of what God within us is. Now, my breakfast at Denny's is no longer just a transaction where somebody brings me some pancakes and some eggs. But there's a beautiful human being who is working his or her way through college, perhaps, or supporting a family, or taking care of a parent, who has dreams and goals and ambitions, who too is trying to discover the presence of God within. And perhaps, if nothing else, I can offer a kind word. I can relate to them as a spiritual being. See, our relationships are much more than what takes place at the external level. We can feel that love. We can feel that presence. We can feel that acceptance. And I think that's all any of us want is just love me. Just love me as I am. Just accept me as I am. I'm not broken. Don't try to fix me. Just love me as I am. Just be with me. Just be with me. And I think in our relationship with God, we first have to come to be at peace with being with ourselves. You know, solitary confinement is a great punishment because most people can't stand to be alone, to be with themselves. And yet saints and mystics and monks go off and live in caves for years at a time because they know that's where the spiritual growth comes. They have to learn to be at peace with themselves before they can be at peace in the world. So if we want others to love us and accept us and be with us just for the sake of being with us, can we love and accept ourselves and be with ourselves just for the sake of being with ourselves? Can you take a day where you leave the electronics behind, turn off the TVs and the cell phones? Take a day where you speak to no one, go out and walk a nature trail, go out and sit on the back porch and watch the birds, be alone with your own thoughts for no other reason than to be with yourself. And when you go into your prayer, into your meditation, can you take a time where you're not asking for anything? You're not trying to demonstrate anything? Were the words of the mystic that says, I ask nothing of thee, O Lord, not even thy love. I only want thee. Can we bring ourselves periodically into a meditation where we go into meditation for no reason whatsoever, just to experience God? As we grow, as we become less judgmental and less critical of ourselves, our external relationships improve because they reflect back to us our own belief about our own worthiness. As we recognize that we already have within us everything that we shall ever need, we stop looking for people to fill our needs for us. And we stop attracting to ourselves people who want us to take care of them. As we take the time to nurture the relationship that we have with our own self. I mean, we're kind of unique creatures because it's like there's us and then there's ourself. Think about that. You know, Jungian psychology, we have a shadow self. We have all of this part of ourself that we haven't accepted yet. And that psychology is about learning how to accept the whole self. But can we nurture and love the relationship that we have with our own self? Can we nurture and accept the relationship that God is having with itself as us and through us? Abraham Lincoln is a famous quote. Whether he really said it or not, I don't know that we'll ever know, but there's a famous quote from Abraham Lincoln that said, if he had 4 hours to chop down a tree, he'd spend 3 of those 4 hours sharpening the axe. We all want to know how to have better relationships with others. And in order to do so, we need to invest first with sharpening our relationship with ourself, with our God. So I invite you this year, as silly as it may seem, get yourself a Valentine card. You even have plenty of time, you can mail it to yourself. And then act surprised when it comes in the mailbox. Remind yourself just how wonderful you are. Forgive yourself for any mistakes that you have ever made in the past while you were suffering under the dream of humanity. Recognize that you were simply doing the best you could and in the process of waking up. And if you had it all to do over again, you wouldn't, because now you know better. Forgive those who have hurt you, for they too were doing the best that they could. Release and let go of the resentment that's holding you back. It's impossible to hate some part of another without hating yourself. Let it go. Let love enter your psyche, into your consciousness, and push it all away. Every day look in the mirror and thank God for the beautiful, beautiful person that you see looking back at you. Before you set foot out the door, remind yourself that the only people you will meet today are beautiful expressions of God, and that you will come together for the mutual purpose of growing your souls, of allowing you to see God more clearly in them and in yourself. And as we do this, as we go forward into the world with the spirit of oneness, with the spirit of unity, letting go of our neediness of other people to fulfill our material needs, and recognizing that all the material needs that we think we have, the divine within us can and will fulfill. Then we find ourselves being with ourselves and with others for no particular reason other than to experience the very presence of God in them, as them, through them, in us, as us, and through us. You are a point where the love of God has become visible in this material plane of existence. Release and let go of every and any idea to the contrary, and go forward on the quickest path there is to the experience of the divine. Perfect love. And so it is.